So the Leagues of Votann have been nerfed already, and it's not come as a great surprise to most of us, but what is surprising is how quickly these nerfs have been rolled out. I really liked the video they released alongside the announcement because it shows they've been looking at what the community are saying online, from are they releasing a broken army to increase sales at launch, through to things like do they even playtest their own armies, and of course they do. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but it's easy to get wrapped up in all of this sort of community buzz when we're all going through it. And the reality is, and they covered this in the video, they were writing the rules for this new army at the same time they were doing the codexes for the Tyranids and the Aldari, and this was before those armies went through their own balance updates. So it doesn't justify everything. They made some pretty crazy decisions, which I think they've now addressed, but it does give some context to the mindset they would have been in at the time. So I thought this video illustrated it really well. It shows a little bit of humor on their side, but they did then touch on the issue that they released it in a unbalanced state, and they are fixing it. So hats off to them. They're doing a really great job touching on that and fixing the Votann so quickly. The first change they made is a change to how judgment tokens work, and I think this is a really good change that they've implemented. So the way it used to work before the nerf is, depending on how many judgment tokens you had on the target, it got easier and easier to auto wound on a 6. So basically, if you had 3 judgment tokens on an enemy unit and you rolled a 4 up, so a 4, a 5, or a 6, that would count as an auto wound. Basically, it would count as a 6, which counts as an auto wound. So basically, it meant things like the Magna Rail rifles, which are really, really strong, were even more overpowered and quite easy to actually hit. So for example, for units with a lot of models in them, with a Magna Rail rifle, if you hit them with an unmodified roll of 6, the damage overspills. So it means that once you kill one model, usually they have 1 wound, that damage carries on spilling over. And the problem with judgment tokens is, on a 4 up, if that unit had 3 judgment tokens on it, which is really easy to make, it's 50-50, right? On a 4 up, that damage would overspill and essentially wipe out the entire unit. So it made the Magna Rail rifles really, really powerful, and they were also pretty scary to larger units because of the auto wounding mechanic. So the change is that they are not auto wounding on 6s anymore. It means those vehicles and monsters in particular can relax a little bit. I know I saw a lot of chat with Knights in Reddit. I can't remember if it was Chaos or Imperial, but regardless, they are these big units, and these weapons were going to absolutely destroy them. And a lot of people were worried on how they counter that, because the Votann felt like a hard counter against them. So I think this is a really, really good decision to nerf this, and it's a really nice functional change to it as well, because it was really, really strong. A great example of the strength of this is I have a land fortress eyed up for one of my first purchases when the full line of models is released. I've got my codex here from the army set, and the heavy Magna rifle that comes on the land fortress has a strength of 14, -4 AP, and for the damage it does 2d3s plus 6. You can imagine how strong that will be against monsters or really big blobs of units. So again, like, hitting that sort of strength weapon and having that damage overspill on a 4 up, as well as the auto wounding side of things, is just ridiculously overpowered. So I still will be getting the land fortress, but this is such a nice change and a very smart one, I think, from Games Workshop. The second major update is an increase to the points cost across the entire army. First up is Uthar, and he's gone up from 140 points to 160 points. Now, you can only run him under one of the leagues anyway, and from what I understand, people weren't necessarily looking to take him over the high call, for example, but he was something people were considering. Definitely an interesting points increase. Next up, we've got the standard call, and this has gone up from 70 points to 80 points in the new balance update. So that's a bit of a nudge up, but I think that's fine. We can still deal with it. Then we've got the Einherjar champion, and this has gone up from 90 points to 110 points. I think this will impact the champion a lot, because I know people were looking at it but not necessarily considering running it. This is a pretty big points increase, so I do think it will impact the lists the champion would have been running. But yeah, that's just the reality we're in right now. The Grimnir has gone up from 80 points to 90 points, which is also a sizable increase, but I think people will still take these. From what I've seen, a lot of people are looking at Grimnir as well as the Iron Master as some of the better HQs, or at least more interesting HQs, and the Iron Master has gone up by a similar amount of points, so from 80 to 92. So both of those have gone up by a decent amount, but still reasonable considering. We've then got the Hearthkin Warriors, and these were 11 points per model, so they've gone up to 12 points per model. That's a reasonable increase. I think these guys being hit with basically the Judgment Token nerf as well, because they will feel it with the Magna Rail rifles specifically. They will feel that pinch a little bit more, so they've gone from being amazing to still pretty good. They're the only troop choice anyway, so it's sort of irrelevant whether, even if they were nerfed into the ground, that they will, you know, we don't have a choice on what we run here. So Hearthkin Warriors going up by 1 point, it's just something we have to deal with. From there, we've got the Einherjar Hearthguard, which is one of the main elites in the army, and these have gone up from 35 points through to 45 points per model. I do think this will hurt them really hard. That's a pretty sizable increase, especially when you've got, you know, the minimum 5 unit size in the army. So it'll be interesting to see how many people run these. The Berserkers, as we're on them anyway, they've gone from 22 to 30 points per model. I think considering you'll need to take an elite, the Hearthguard will be the ones people choose. The Berserkers feel pretty weak now, in my opinion, but yeah, the elite choices feel like they went up by a fairly significant amount. The Hernkin Pioneers have gone up from 30 points per model to 35 points per model. These guys still seem like they'll be pretty strong, to be honest. So these are the bikes, like the hover bikes that are going around. And basically they have gone up a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're the fast attack that people will probably be running with. The other choice, the Sagittor, is the transport for the army. So of course it will still have its place, but the Pioneers will be zipping around the battlefield and doing what they can. So 5 points is a reasonable upgrade, increase, I think. The Sagittor has increased from 110 points to 130 points. I think this is a pretty big increase, but again, I guess like the rest of the army, there isn't a very wide selection right now, so we'll still see all of these units being used, but yeah, it's gone up by 20 points, and I'll still be running one, and they seem like they'll still be pretty strong. Finally, onto the heavy support, and we've got the Brokir Thunderkin, and these guys have gone up from 35 to 40 points per model. When you can only take a minimum of 3 for the unit, that will be felt for sure, but they still will be taken in the armies, because again, you've got this or the Land Fortress, and both are pretty strong, but at the end of the day, the Thunderkin are still a strong selection in the units. Finally, we've got the Hekaton Land Fortress, and this has gone up from 230 points to 300 points. That feels like a really, really big increase, so we'll have to see what that means when we get it in our hands. For me, this is the equivalent of when the storm surges went up. It meant that we felt the pain, but it was probably a reasonable increase. Their data sheets look really strong, so we'll still be taking them anyway, and they're one of the heavy options, so it's something we'll be looking out for. I think across the board, these are good changes. The Votann were far too strong for launch, especially with the Judgment Token mechanics. So I think both of these being announced so early in the release is a really, really good thing, because I know for me it's going to change how I approach my models. I might even take some more troops now, an extra unit, than I was considering previously. But other than that, I mean, I love the look of the Land Fortress, so I'm going to be taking that. I'll probably be taking Hearthguard anyway, because I think they look really cool, and I prefer them over the Berserkers. And outside of that, it's just a bit of a tax to play the Votann. But considering how it was looking and how overpowered we would have been, I'd rather these points increases come at this stage rather than when we're blasting people at tournaments and people just hate the army and hate playing against it. I've already got that with my Tau, so I'd rather not have it with my second army. So thank you for watching, and please do consider liking and subscribing.